Good afternoon. We had quite an interesting session, the previous one, on the digital technology. We have an eminent panelist here for the next session, where we are talking about green transition and technology for that. How we'll do, Monojit already threatened me that he will go out from the panel if I'm delaying him. So I will start with Monojit, who is the Eastern Region TCS Delivery Center head. See, the main point is when we go for a green transition, it's really not a individual or unique work. It's basically a completely collaborative work between governments, government public, and also citizens. And the transitioning of greening, already people are telling it is just transition, not only green transition, it has to also have an equity between the society. So it's a complex scenario and it's a very costly affair also. I mean, UNO is reviewing and saying that it may take around $500 billion by 2030. Not a joke. What I'll do, will come to Monojit first. See, from the it's really not a particular perspective of only TCS, but from the perspective of the private partnership, private-public partnership, and the citizen service, how you are looking at the green transition, and what are the technologies you think will hit the nerve in next 5 to 10 years? Because there are a few things which are really not very common, like green hydrogen, we are all talking about. But are you really doing it? So what you are thinking about that? How is your take on that?
Thank you, Dipankar. And first of all, my apologies to the audience because I will not be able to hang around the whole panel time. See, there are a couple of aspects to what Dipankar asked. Okay, and is anyone following COP29 in this room? Okay, so the COP29, which is the annual climate event, and this year it is happening in Azerbaijan, and most of the government representatives, large organizations, climate scientists, they all gather in one location to talk about the climate challenges. Now, the reason I asked that question, if you have noticed on the newspaper, the major topic is climate finance. And to my reading, the developing countries are asking for $1.3 trillion of support from the developed nations on an annual basis. Now, which is a huge amount, and there is a lot of arguments that is happening. Okay. Now, coming back to exactly what Dipankar mentioned, that can this money be organized by a set of governments? Will US be kind enough, along with Mr. Trump coming back into power, will they be kind enough to shell out 500 billion per year? The answer is no. Okay. So, gathering this or collecting this amount of money is I would say, I don't want to put a very negative spin on it, but almost not happening. Okay. Reality. So, this is where the private government partnerships, private public partnerships, that has to contribute in. And all of us, in a small scale, on a daily basis, can do activities which is more climate friendly. Okay. Now, few examples, okay, and I was just taking TCS example because I am representing TCS. We are a software services company, we're not manufacturing anything. So as such, our scope 1 and scope 2 is not that very difficult. But we have large campuses, okay, and we are consciously building new campuses which are platinum rated by Indian Green Building Council. The cost will go up, but we as an organization is ready to take up the cost because those campuses would be more sustainable from a construction point of view. Okay. If you have been to any TCS campus, we have a campus just behind this building. It's a very green campus. Okay. Almost 3,000 plus trees are there in the campus of 40 acres. What is the reason? Reason being, we are trying to promote in our limited way within our campus the biodiversity part. So you will see a lot of birds coming in different seasonal times. Okay. Now, electricity that we consume, we have converted it to renewable. Okay. So, and that is with the support of the local government, we are buying green energy from WBSCDCL. Okay. So, I'm just taking this as an example, in our limited way, we are trying to be climate positive. Now, on a daily basis, another initiative that is work in progress in TCS now, we have built an app, okay, which we are promoting first within our associates, and that associate count is very high, 600,000 plus associates we have in TCS. Okay, so more than 500,000. So that app will help you to monitor your activities from the time you wake up and go to bed. What have you done and how much carbon in the process you are generating? And if you are climate conscious, for example, if you can switch your lifestyle, if you can switch your diet, okay, instead of wheat and rice, all of you know which crops are more climate friendly. Okay, so if we can just make minor changes, demand for wheat 5 years down the line goes down, demand of rice 5 years down the line goes down, and instead we are adopting a lifestyle where we are promoting those crops which take less water, which is more climate friendly, there will be an impact. So public initiatives, private public initiatives, all of us can contribute. And coming back to the technology, because this talks about technological pathways, in climate finance, there are many use cases, but I will just take one use case. Climate finance, obviously this money is not going to come. But technology can produce predictive modeling based on different weather data patterns, that which are the most vulnerable regions. So if region A is more vulnerable than region B, then majority of the climate fund, whatever is secured from these developed nations, should be targeted to region A. Correct? That's the common sense. Okay. So in allocation of fund, in simulating the futuristic scenarios, how the climate will change in region A, region B, because weather prediction, climate data is, there's a lot of data elements, and that processing for that you need ideally your high computing power, okay, and modeling will require high computing power, okay. So quantum computing will come in. We need all those technologies to be more accurate in our prediction, and that will help us in much more realistic distribution of climate fund that we can secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Monojit. You have touched two important points. One is individual minimalistic approach, which can be monitored and can be implemented if there is a tweaking required. And second one is high compute data analysis to find out the most vulnerable place and fund more. That what lots of people are talking about, the equity of distribution. It's not very easy. It's tough. Just to let Sanjay Das is here, MD WEBEL. WEBEL is setting up a data center in Shiliguri with the GPU as a service. So probably that will help some data analysis there. I will come to from the complete individual how TCS is greening their campus, etc. I'll come to Aman Mittal ji. You are basically Joint Chief Executive Officer for MITRA, which is a type of like an Niti Aayog. And that is basically strengthening the government state concepts. So I will really try to understand from you, from this individual minimalistic, how government is looking up for the overall citizens' well-being, including the technologies like environment management, green energy, how that is being basically hand in gloves, and how you're getting those funds to do that? I mean, what is the public process you are taking up?
Thank you, sir. One of the most important things that we are looking at in terms of, especially in Maharashtra as MITRA, in terms of green transition is on both the supply side as well as the demand side. So when we look at the individual supply side issues, the main issue when we are looking at a green transition is that there are very few business use cases that are able to come out of it, and most of the projects that we are like which are green projects on the government side, they are not really financially viable in many cases. So, what we are now doing is that we have to come out with a mechanism for being able to mark them which are economically viable and be able to take them up. So the problem is a lot of this economic minus financial viability thing is has not really been coded. So there is a concept of natural capital accounts. So in Maharashtra, we are doing a data-driven project. So in which we are trying to come out with this natural capital account for all these green energy transitions. So I think that will be very useful to be able to take up a lot of these projects at a mass scale. Second thing, I think, like he said about the green hydrogen thing. So we have just signed up to create a green hydrogen cluster in Mumbai. It's, I think, the second cluster in India. So one of the issues that we kind of faced was when we started with our green hydrogen policy, we said that 50 KTPA plant will be given a subsidy. But then we had to come down and modify it to make it 10 KTPA because largely there are very practical issues with respect to the demand of take of it as well as the cost of it. So in that case, the government really has to step in to understand the needs of the private sector because, and I think this is one of the perfect cases where we kind of shifted our policy from 50 KTPA to 10 KTPA because when we look at the overall hydrogen demand, it is obviously a lot more. But then it may not really be feasible at this point of time. Today, when we talk about solar and all these issues, probably the solar sector has been coming up since 2000, maybe 7, 8. But it really took off when we were able to reduce the cost of solar to less than thermal cost. So now we are so that is one part of it. Second, I would go to when we look at green transition at the mass level. I would also like to bring about the aspect of systematic issues. So there are two aspects on it. So when we are going for adoption of AI, the problem of AI versus the normal computing is that AI generally takes around 10 times more power than a general computing system. So we have to be very, very careful in how we are powering our plants. Currently, our thermal mix is around 75%. And the more solar we do, the more thermal we have to do. And that is largely for grid stability. So we need to also find solutions within renewables so that we can have a mix of total energy mix in a way that it comes, the total thermal mix to the non-renewable mix comes down because our power demand is not going to go down. I think we didn't, even in the COP, we've never committed as a country that we will be reducing our power demand. And as a growing country, it has to grow up. So we need to finance our models in a way that the cost of green energy comes down even for the supply side, the generator. Because for the generator, he will have to provide stability. It's not, and then that cost has to be built into the consumer side. So that is another thing that we were discussing, in case you discuss the energy as a service that we were discussing. So that is a point that we have to build in these ideas of carbon credits within our billing systems. So I think these are two major aspects that we are kind of looking at, and probably in the next 10 to 15 year transition, we'll be able to go through a very clean and green advancement for our country.
You are correct. I mean, frankly, the demand supply in the renewable is not really very healthy, I should say. Frankly, even if you are going for EV, the transport, but what is happening? The charging is still coming back from the farmer.
that was the basic point. So I'll just come back to this point. So I was just discussing with the JS Power 2 days back. I'd gone to Delhi. So the same issue is there. So now the main problem, as I said, is ki one of the things like solar, one of the proposals that we are kind of putting up. So can we think of solar and you mix it with probably the hydro power, because it's floating solar, not the land
Right.
solar, and somehow uh, the peak demand can be met through this hydel and the solar can, and then obviously there's this battery systems which
Battery and storage.
can be battery energy storage systems. So, but that all these things are very costly. So when we try to install such a thing, they have to, the differential between the thermal and this expenditure will have to be somehow built in to our existing power structures without at the end of the day disturbing our
Giving to the
industry.
correct.
Our industry, because the industry becomes unsustainable if the power cost becomes so high.
Correct.
So I think that is somewhere we need to kind of come
It's
up
a-
with
It's
policy.
a catch-22 situation. So I'll come to Anand. Uh, see what we're discussing. If you see, everything is coming up, frankly, on a collaboration platform, and you are having a platform with AI, IoT, and if you see the digital spine, I'll term it as digital spine, which basically makes this, even if you're saying that peak time power demand, if I can predict it properly, probably I can arrange the power supply in a much better fashion. So how we're looking at this from the platforms, are you really thinking a little bit beyond the current AI, IoT paradigm to a newer green paradigm?
Yes, and very good afternoon to everyone, and good afternoon to my fellow speakers as well. Well, when we talk about green paradigm, yes, there is one major aspect that Aman pointed out is on the cost, and the adoption is one major challenge that is stopping us from going green. Probably, sun has been spoken in Vedas about few thousand years back, and still today we are not able to harness the power. So the reason obviously is cost, and we have not really invested into the economies of scale so that people can really adopt solar. What AI and IoT can do is build energy as a service, and we were talking about this the sidelines. But EaaS is a new model that will probably change the whole paradigm of how we look at the energy aspect. Today, if any of us wants to put a solar thing, the first thing that comes to our mind is the cost and whether the ROI is going to really be useful for us. Now, what we do is we can change the energy as a service, can change the business model from a capex to an opex one, where you pay out of the earnings that you get. That makes it very easy for everyone to adopt, not just the residential owners, but even the enterprises around. They can now move their investments into solar basis OPEX. So that what happens is they really can start utilizing the green energy and the excess, instead of giving it back to the grids on net metering, which usually is have very minuscule returns. You can do peer-to-peer trading. So the peer-to-peer trading is somewhere where they will earn and then giving it back to the capital intensive or the investors becomes much more easy. The next step that you do is how to make sure your yield is good, because it's not just installing, but it is actually maintaining it for 5, 10, 25 years we talk. And the panels should work for 25 good years. How do we ensure that the yield is there? That's where the AIs and the IoTs come into picture, the irradiance. Even, if you can alert that there is too much of dust and the energy production is going down, you go back and you make sure that the panels are cleaned. You can put auto cleaners to make sure that they are clean periodically as well as basis demand. Once you have consistent energy generation, it is about energy storage. How do you really store the energy? How are the battery charging patterns? All of these aspects, the AI and the IoT related aspects will help you make sure that the battery would last long, because you don't want to replace the battery every 2 3 years. Then the whole ROI goes for a toss. So making sure that the longevity of the battery is also important to ensure that you get good returns from these investments. So essentially, if you look at the energy as a service model, it can be part of three distinct ecosystems. One is the energy generation aspects. There are different ways of generating energy. Second is the aspect that talks about various different or various business models that can come into picture. And the third is the technology part that will help build all of these together and stitch a journey that could be a real combination of utilities today, solar, wind. Again, the EV aspect that we spoke about, yes, it's drawing power from the thermal powers. It doesn't make sense. But then once you have P2P trading, you can use the excessive energy to generate the, or to power the EV bikes and cars, so that eventually everything becomes green. And most importantly, the carbon credits and the business that Aman was talking, that's going to help us.
Actually, basically the current focus is on bidirectional charging and taking it more on the intuitive basis. But the problem basically remains where is that the grid stability with the solar is not really very strong. I mean, we really need to look into those technical aspects which are deep technical, not really AI, IoT technical. I'm talking about the deep power technical to make that happen. I mean, I really will really come back to that a little bit later, but I want to go to Monojit. See, all these require some solution, and the companies like TCS, others are basically more on the product of giving solutions or platforms so that people can work with this. What is your approach to really make the intuitive carbon management, carbon sequestration, energy management, greening of the people life, not the individual minimalistic one. I'm talking about the more G2C or citizen-centric service delivery. How we are looking at that, and what is your take on that?
Okay, so from a TCS point of view, I think we have customers across industry segments. Okay, so let's take a retail customer in UK or in Europe or in North America. So for them, the supply chain, the carbon that is getting emitted from warehouse to distribution to while you receive as a consumer the end product. So there is a significant carbon that gets generated and people are tracking that. So supply chain optimization from a carbon emission perspective is something that they are talking about. If you are looking at a chemical company, obviously all of us are aware that the chemicals that are used in today's agriculture is not necessarily climate friendly. Okay, so we work with some of the Fortune 500 chemical companies in the world. So obviously they are working on those use cases. So it is TCS not on a standalone basis. TCS, because we have the opportunity to work with the premium, I would say the brands from across industry segments globally, and some of the markets are much more sensitive than others. For example, European Union region is very, very sensitive about your carbon footprint, and they have actually started audited because of their scope 3, they want to audit the suppliers and partners, how green they are. Okay, so this is part of the evaluation process that they have set in motion. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is different industries have different relevant use cases where we are working with our customer. Our research lab is working with our customers to come up with effective solution for them. So it is not that TCS alone is going to take the credit. It is there are experts, subject matter experts are coming from our customer organization. There are a lot of startups, and one good thing is there are a lot of social startups who have, and even in India, there are quite a few of them who are actually picking up climate related topics, and they are trying to come up with a solution which is profitable but also impacting positively the society. There are many of those in India and globally. So all we work with the entire ecosystem to come up with some effective solution for different segments. Now, I just want to address one thing, which little bit different. I'm digressing, Dipankar, from the comments that was made in the by the previous panelist. See, I am very passionate about climate topics, okay, and I study them, I read them, and I have been attending this COP29 sessions virtually, quite a few of them. Now, so the point is, we have crossed the stage where we can only talk about ROI before we jump in. This is the Paris Agreement that happened in 2015. The scientists set a target of 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature increase as the cutoff, as the threshold. That is definitely going to be exceeded. Okay, by 2032-33, the temperature will go beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade. So that is another less than 10 years to go. And if the temperature goes beyond 2 degrees centigrade, it will be kind of spinning on its own. We will not, whatever technology we adopt, it will be too late to recovery. So when you are looking at, I don't want to create a panic, but the reality is the progress is not fast enough. Okay, whether you look at, and the technologies are evolving, technologies are still expensive. I agree with that, but I think again going back at an individual level, and I'm taking again one example from TCS side. The green energy that we are buying here cost us more per unit than thermal energy. But we have taken that hit because that is required to be done. So all of us individually have to be ready to take the hit. Otherwise, some cases will be there, some cases will not be there. But we have run out of time to keep discussing on these topics. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Monojit. I mean, that's a very apt point. Basically, it needs a transformative change from the status quo. It's not a delta. And we probably all are accepting this. The challenge, what you are saying is, yes, you have to invest. I mean, there is no other option because you have to reset the button because there is only one earth we have. Yesterday, I was in another panel with for this almost same topic, but a little bit different, is wealth from waste. There also we are discussing that how the technology can really help us to curtail the cost, but still make it impactful. So I'll come to Anandji on a little bit different topic. See, we are talking about energy. Energy is basically one part of it. But sustainability is not only energy; it also creating a sustainable economy, creating a holistic ecosystem. What Monojit was telling. I mean, he was talking about TCS and client and startup. I'm expanding a little bit more. How you look at that in future? Because you are talking energy as a service. I mean, actually, that sparks me. Few years back, we were talking about an exchange where people can do P2P. There is no regulations. That's the whole problem. I mean, frankly, we can continue this session, but we have a limited time. There is a regulation which says how to do a P2P. But actually, you have to do a larger community. So how you're thinking of this collaboration, platforming, bringing people in, taking a sustainability in different format?
So sustainability in a different format is probably what you're talking about is probably generating employment.
Correct.
Yeah. So when you talk about something like a green initiative, there are three different factors that come into picture. The first is government regulations and the compliances that bodies would have. Say, for example, for industries, you have BRSR, For the buildings, you have green building certifications. Now, all of these need people to A, formulate the strategies, B, actually do the audits and do the compliances. So that automatically generates a little bit of employment at that particular level. The second aspect that comes into is the actual industries that they employ sustainability aspects. And it's not just energy, it's also about waste reduction, it's also about automation into reusing the components that are produced from a factory. Now, how do you really make sure that all of these are part of your ecosystem? Is, you make sure that from the CEO to the security guard, all of them have sustainability as part of the DNA. It's not just a buzzword anymore. And as Monojit is saying, it's high time we really make sure that it comes from within as a necessity, not as something that is going to help us just gain a name or a fame. But once you do that, once you start deploying these renewable energies, automatically the people who do the installations, it opens up a completely different market. You're talking about 1 crore solar rooftops. Think of the employment that is generating in terms of not only the factory or the produce, but the installation engineers, the site visit engineers. So technicians who were otherwise finding it difficult to get jobs is creating or supporting this sustainable aspect. And the third most important aspect is players like private players or corporates who actually want to adopt and make sure, like TCS or Geo. We at Geo, if you come to RCP, you'll find all the parking slots full of solar rooftops. They generate energy, they charge the vehicles, they give it back to the corporate park, wherein we use that energy. All the chillers are operated using the solar farms. We're setting up a factory in Jamnagar to do all these manufacturing of panels. So, and plus the whole energy. I mean, Jamnagar is something that's almost run on renewable energy. So that's as I mean, TCS, Geo, and all of the big institutions, they have to come up with these aspects. Most important is the institutional customers who have these small. See, it's very easy to implement green kind of energy in a big, maybe a 50-acre plus kind of a land, because you have enough land, you have enough roofs to implement these. But say, for example, you have a bank, SBI, and you have these number of branches and ATMs. How do you really make sure that all of these are sustainable and green? Now, that's somewhere I think we'll have to, put our heads from programming of microservices to developing microgrids, which are localized in nature and do these exchanges. So, it's a transition from just a software outlook to actually getting into microgrids where you have different sources, hydrogen, solar, wind, wherever possible. If there is sea, yes, you have these tidal energy that is coming up. So the possibilities are enormous. It's only about how do we really use them, apply our brains, and take it ahead.
Actually, what I'm seeing also, that the way of financing the private equity firms, they are also looking at differently. What Monojit was saying, that we cannot wait now, and I'm seeing that the younger generation much better than us. I mean, we have a few here who are looking at the organization not by their profitability, by the sustainability. And the more we do that, I'm sure we'll get into this churn very quickly.
Yes, that's what the OPEX model comes into picture, and
Correct.
like you buy a 55 or a 65-inch television for 80,000-90,000 rupees, you better on an EMI, you better as well buy a rooftop solar. So there are companies who are ready to finance these models. There are investors coming into it. It's only about utilizing them now.
Correct. So, Amanjit, for you, because it's a MITRA is like, doing the Niti Aayog style thing in Maharashtra. My point is how we are looking at a sustainable society, a sustainable city. I'm talking about smart city. Please, I mean that's a different thing. A sustainable city. Yeah, I was going through your site, etc. I found out you're working on that. So how you are conceptualizing it, how you think it can be operationalizing, it's a future work. So how you're doing that?
So I'll actually give you a real example of what we are doing. So I was about to just talk about creating institutions which survive, basically, especially government institutions which survive on what I would call green profits. So the life example of it is we sent a proposal already. It's about $1 billion funded project. Niti has given the thing. What is the idea of the project is, so all your city waste, a lot of these OMs, they do not, I mean, the STPs do not function. So leave that thing apart. So what we are trying to say is, how do you finance it? The financing of it has to be all green financing. And when we mean by green financing, it's not only about low cost green finance costs, but the financing to these corporations to take up a project should be in a way that this institution approves the project based upon its what it's generating in terms of its green profits, so called. And if it is taking, let's say it's taking it from the market at 7%, it lends it out only at 7% for the green project. So how does this institution survive? So what we said is, this institution will survive from the green credits that it is going to generate. So the problem is, as of now, we are only talking about institutions thriving on profits in terms of rupee or dollar. But we've not even thought about green profits becoming the sustainable lifeline of an organization. That's doable in at least the government organizations which have a sovereign guarantee. So this is what we've proposed. So these are probably methods that, when we institutionalize such kind of mechanisms, then in the long run, there can be a very strong sustainable city mechanism, because the same thing is applicable for all the strong cities. All cities are now trying to raise green bonds. I think Pune Municipal Corporation raised green bonds. So, but the point is that once you raise the bonds, then it all becomes normal banking. So then there you have to go end to end. The entire sustenance, so there's a MITRA which is supposed to loan to the corporation. The sustenance of this organization, we said, should only be linked to the green profits it generates. So green profits as a concept is something that needs to be introduced at least in the larger organizations and organizations which have a sovereign guarantee, governments which have a sovereign guarantee, so that in the long run, one, it leads to project execution, because green credits cannot be generated unless the project is executed. So your ICOR, there's a concept of ICOR in economics, the incremental capital output ratio increases. So that's good for the economy. And second, decreases. And second is that there is a culture of sustainability which gets developed over a period of time. And that is probably what I think we should all look at in what is called culture of sustainability, right from financing till execution, and then to kind of cycle it through. So I think that is something that we should all kind of start thinking on.
Thank you very much. Panel will take a question. Okay, let's have a question. But while Chakraborty is getting a mic, we will be closing this. What we discussed in this session is very interesting. Actually, this session is should be almost 2 to 3 hours to be precise. Monojit will be very angry with me, but we are talking from the individual minimalistic approach to the corporate to the government, and we are closing it with a sustainable approach, which should be culture change. That's very important. I mean, actually, we are stopping a little bit short of that, and not only the corporates, but it should come from the governments also, so that we can do a cross-government and public, private, all together work with the startups and the supply chain. Whole chain should make this happen. And I'm sure the younger generation will not really look at us in a high manner if you're not going to do that immediately, what Monojit was saying. So, okay.
See, it's a question, or I would say a bit of an observation. See, to basically find the critical mass in the society on green tech, what is very important is that you ought to have a disclosure process. When you talk about sovereign guarantees, there has to be a reporting and disclosure of the financials. And second, to give mobility to that disclosure, there has to be valuation on a discovery on a platform. So, I'm speaking as a director in WEBEL, of course, but I also represent two very large hedge funds. One is based in Abu Dhabi and the other based in London. They are very keenly looking at the entire area of green bonds as well as green financing. The challenge, what is very important here, is to develop a sort of an exchange platform where Dipankar was talking about the deep technology of the power sector, where you have a convergence of various conventional and non-conventional energy sources, link it up with the top end of the technology of digital, of converging, so that you are able to have a supply chain of all the players in the green energy space, as well as the green energy providers, and the financiers who will do the market making. Then only you can have what you call a fair amount of mobility in the sector, investments coming in, transactions happening, and the larger stakeholder audiences can be served, whether it's government or whether it's private. See, the fact remains, when it comes to energy, there is no difference between government and private. Energy is all-encompassing because it touches human lives. All stakeholders, all citizens, everywhere, across borders, across nations, have got an impact when it talks about carbon footprint. The technology to try and harness that, to detect it, to discover value in it, and do a funding. It could be in the government sector, ways of like variable gap funding, where you discover that initiatives which are very capital intensive, like hydrogen, on a public transportation system, and the investments will not come in the short term. So this time lag probably can be done by variable gap funding. But even if you want to do VGF, there's no free lunch. There has to be certain measurement yardsticks. So reporting and disclosure is very, very important, both for the private sector as well as for the regulator, being the government, to look into how this technology is evolving and growing. So I think the panel has been discussing all these challenges, but I see as a solution to take the next steps forward to create an integrated platform and a market where trading can happen in terms of green energy and green energy technology.
Thank you, Shobha. The problem is that creating the platform is very complex. Only for that I asked these both Geo and TCS the same thing. We have very short of time.
Silicon Corporation. It's based out of San Francisco, California, Austin, Texas, and Calcutta. We are, in fact, we have been working on a platform, this very unique platform, exactly to address what he said. This platform is for climate smart and precision agriculture. It's a very green platform. I do not know of any other startup in India, at least, they are doing that. We are addressing three major problems of agriculture. This is very relevant to this. One is productivity, one is sustainability, one is connectivity. My goal is, before I leave this world, I want to see most farmers in this country, they have a shirt and they know that their kids will have some food by the end of the day, and the entire ecosystem of agriculture in a very green, sustainable manner will go forward. Is it easy? No. But we have decided to do that, yes. Is it challenging? Yes. And are we doing it? Yes. Using technologies like digital innovation and transformation,
Thank you very
AI,
much.
IoT, and all.
can
So we are
discuss
doing
this
that,
afterwards.
sir. Yeah, it is
Thank you
difficult.
very much.
We are doing that.
Let's close this.
That's all.
Thank you very much, panelists, for being so. Yeah.
In terms of what you addressed, a very interesting thing that about the platforms and why the trading is not happening right now is what I said about the natural capital accounts. That has not been properly developed in India. Now we are working with MOSPI and Government of Maharashtra. MOSPI, the Government of India Statistics Collection. So if we are able to come to an agreed valuations, that is first. That is the most critical part of it. And second, obviously, will be the trading aspect of it.
It's very, and that, as I was telling, the regulations are still catching up and things like that. It will happen. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
we
so
close
much.
the session. Thank you, panelists, for being so generous and discussing so many varied topics on this. Thank you very much.